I'm driving the minimum speed allowed in the far right lane, and all these cars are whizzing by me, and I'm white knuckling it. And as I was driving towards an interchange, towards the exit, the thought crossed my mind that I could just drive. I could just not take the exit and drive completely off of this overpass. I was carrying around a suitcase of trauma and life experiences that I didn't know what to do with, how to heal, transform, and get on the other side of. The medication allowed me to step back and take a breath and say, okay. It didn't solve anything though. I felt like I had a hole in my soul from all of these things. I had to find a way that was different than what I was currently doing to unpack that suitcase. And I just looked up and I said, I don't know who or what is up there, but this isn't working and I need something different. And if you show me something different, I will do it. And if it works, I'll share it with anyone who's willing to listen. I was listening to YouTube at the time, and I looked down and there was something there in my feed. I thought, play. And she was talking about how what we're thinking in our minds impacts our body. It impacts our reality. What? I'm creating my reality? If I'm creating my reality and I am creating all of this in this entire experience, this is freaking fantastic news because it means I can create something different. How far can I take utilizing this power of the subconscious mind? Because at this point, you could tell me to put on a gunny sack, crack eggs on my head, and howl at the moon. If I thought I was going to get relief, I would do it. I started to get this idea, what if I could manifest a symptom-free taper off of my medication? How far am I willing to go to explore relief, something different, another possibility in my own mind? My name is Kat Cederberg, and I'm going to cry already. Sorry. My name is Kat Cederberg, and I am not a fan of labels, but if I had to give myself one, I'd say that I'm a wayshower and a pointer. I take joy in pointing people back to themselves. So the journey feels long, kind of in retrospect. I feel like I've covered a lot of terrain in a very short amount of time that I've been on this earth. But it's been exciting. And really what I'm feeling called to share is starting from a very specific point on this journey. And that is a time when I was medicated with psychiatric medications. I was on 20 milligrams of Sapphirus, 1.5 milligrams of risperidone, 20 milligrams of Lexapro, 0.75 milligrams of Klonopin, 1,200 milligrams of Trileptal. Think that's all of it. And while the medication did serve me for a while, there came a point where it was no longer serving me. I made the decision to taper myself off of the medication. The Lexapro is what I started with. I did what would basically be considered a rapid taper, and that was very disorienting, and I had a lot of symptoms, and it was a struggle because I was working in corporate America at the time in the industry that I have my degree in. But I made it through. And then my next decision was to start tapering down the Klonopin because I was really impaired at work. And my psychiatrist at the time had me do a rapid taper of the first 0.25 milligrams of the Klonopin, and that was not good at all. I followed his instructions, but I had insomnia. I had a lot of anxiety. I had anxiety that I never had, and I found myself pretty compromised into a place that I felt that I was not delivering on the work ethic that I like to deliver at work. And so I voluntarily resigned so that I could regroup and figure out what I'm going to do next, get myself together, and then the plan was to go back into my career. At that point, I started looking for assistance, and I found assistance through online forums and some Facebook groups and things like that, and they were offering a lot of information on how to taper myself off of. I was not really getting any assistance at all from my prescriber at that time. In fact, my first prescriber actually fired me as a patient because I said, I think I'm over medicated and I don't think I need all of this medication and I would like to come off of it. They basically said, I can't do anything else for you. We're done. So the next psychiatrist that I went to in working with me, she said, I think you could probably, get off the Sapphirus and we can start there. But when the Sapphirus was over, she didn't really want to go any further. I decided that I was just going to need to continue to do it and not tell her what I was doing. And the accumulation of that rapid taper and almost a cold turkey off of the Lexapro and that first 2.5 of the Klonopin, I had some stability, but starting then the cut of the Sapphirus, things were kind of shaky again. I had a lot of symptoms, but I was finding ways to manage it. I was going to yoga and I leaned a lot on my faith, but it seemed like everything that I grew up learning and knowing about the faith, it wasn't enough, or maybe it wasn't working. It just wasn't delivering any relief, and I refused to believe that there wasn't something more or different. So I continued to sort of plug along. I eventually did get myself off of the Sapphirus. And then I decided I'm going to start in on the risperidone. And that was in the beginning of 2017. And I got a few cuts into that and I just hit a wall and everything just hit the fan. I mean, hit the fan in a major way. The cumulative effect of being in the forums and on the groups, I allowed that environment to impact me in ways that, in retrospect, were not helpful at all. I realized that I was buying into other people's stories, and I got to a place where I was struggling to delineate how much of this is impacting me and is my own thing, and how much of it is just reading about someone else's experience and then taking that on and being impacted by it. And I got to a place where I became very, very neurotic, and I started having, what would be labeled as OCD type stuff, very fearful, very panicky, very anxiety ridden. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I was reading all of these horror stories and things. And while the forums have their place, for me, it was not helping me. It was just making it worse. And I was dragging my husband into the experience and freaking out about tapering schedules, and I need a new spreadsheet, and I have to go slower, and maybe if I don't cut the pills dry, maybe if I do, dissolve it and do what's called a liquid titration, maybe that would work. I just kept bumping up, and I could go no further. And I became very, very depressed and very suicidal. And one day I was driving to my psychiatrist appointment, the one that I wasn't telling that I was tapering off of the risperidone because there wasn't support there for that. And I was on the Dallas North Tollway, 6 lanes, and I thought, my husband's at work. If I can just get myself to the appointment, that was my only goal. And I'm driving the minimum speed allowed in the far right lane, and all these cars are whizzing by me, and I'm white knuckling it, and I'm sweating, I'm perspiring, I have sweat on my upper lip, my armpits, everything. And I could see that I was white knuckling the steering wheel, and I thought, I just have to hold on. And as I was driving towards an interchange, towards the exit, the thought crossed my mind that I could just not take the exit and drive completely off of this overpass. And it would be over. I would have relief. But there's something in me. I've always been this way. I'm kind of a fighter. When someone tells me I can't do something, it just makes me want to prove them wrong. And I thought, I don't know how, but I'm not going to do this. I went to my appointment, I came back, and I went on like this for several months. At the time, I was also seeing a naturopathic doctor. I had so many things going on with my stomach and my body. I learned later that, it was Klonopin related, how long I'd been on the medication, things like that. And I started talking to her about this frustration. It wasn't really in her wheelhouse, but she said, you know what? I know of a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She's open to newer ideas and new possibilities, and I'd like to connect the two of you. I connected with her, took my husband with me. Together we came up with a plan of, okay, let's start tapering off the medication, and we'll just see how you do. Let's just see what happens. And the agreement was, if things go off the rail, I'm willing to go back on the medication, but I want to see what it is like without the medication. And from the beginning, my desire was that not only am I tapering myself off of the medication, but I want to be healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually in ways that I never was before. There's an idea in the community that I just want to go back to my life. I just want to go back to normal. I just want to get off these meds and be done. And that wasn't my attitude. My attitude was, there's a reason why I took these medications. Those narratives started to crumble, which contributed to why I decided to taper myself off. First it started with depression. That depression was because I was in a major in college that was not authentic to me. And I abandoned myself because I thought, I don't know if I'm ever going to get married. I can do this. I like it. Am I thrilled by it? No, but I'm good at it. And so that major afforded me a lifestyle and a salary that I knew that I believed at the time, in my limitation, that I could never have that type of an income or salary if I honored myself and I did what I really wanted to do. And so that's when the depression started. And it just continued to build from there. So I was put on an antidepressant, but that antidepressant made me feel sort of high and sort of unmanaged. And okay, it seemingly brought up my mood, but then it went into places that it was like, whoa, I can't rein this in. And so then I was diagnosed by another psychiatrist with bipolar disorder. And I realized that in retrospect, and even then to some degree, although I have a much more awareness now, that yes, that medication contributed to those behaviors and things, but what really was going on was that I was carrying around a suitcase of trauma and life experiences that I didn't know what to do with, how to heal, transform, and get on the other side of. I was doing all of the things that I was employing, all of the resources that society tells you to do. I had been in counseling. I had, weekly, I had gone inpatient, outpatient, intensive, outpatient, intensive. I was doing all the right things. I was the most compliant patient, I would hear all the time from my psychiatrist with my medication. I was doing all the right things, but it wasn't working. I had a lot of insight about why I got the way I did, why I was experiencing, why I felt the way I felt, but nothing changed. And the narrative around medication was, it's like a diabetic, and a diabetic needs their insulin. And if you don't have your insulin, you're not going to be able to manage your diabetes. Well, in my quest to just get my physical self together and working with the naturopathic doctor, I came to realize you can totally manage your diabetes with diet and exercise. You don't have to take medication. And so there were cracks starting to form around this narrative, and then awarenesses coming in that, yes, I was behaving a certain way and I was feeling a certain way. And it all came down to pathologizing normal human experiences that a person doesn't know what to do with. And so I realized that these behaviors and these patterns were maladaptive behavior and coping strategies that were not serving me anymore. And when I didn't know what to do with them, the medication allowed me to step back and take a breath and say, okay, it didn't solve anything though. It just made me apathetic. It just made me not care at best. And the longer I was on it, it was an insidious process. I lost more of myself. I didn't know who I was anymore. I couldn't feel emotions. I knew I loved my husband, but I couldn't feel that love because we were married before I was medicated. I had a head knowledge, but I couldn't feel. I seemingly felt like I lost that connection to God, to something greater than myself. And I felt like I had a hole in my soul from all of these things. And it got to the point where I had this suitcase that had all of this stuff stuffed in it. And the only thing the medication did was I sat on the suitcase and a whole bunch of duct tape, just a whole bunch of duct tape was wrapped around that suitcase to hold all of that baggage in place. But it didn't go anywhere. It just sort of band-aided it. And I knew that I was going to have to unpack that suitcase. I had to find a way that was different than what I was currently doing. When I came to Dallas, I got connected with a therapist, and he really started pointing me towards actual tools, actionable steps. We weren't just sitting there talking about things. And so that allowed me to feel like I was really contributing towards this goal. I can take control of this situation and start doing some things. But eventually I was bumping up again to, okay, I have tools to manage things, but it's really not, it's helping, but it's really not getting to the root and resolving things. So I knew that there had to be something deeper. In the throes of all of this tapering, my brother got married in Cancun. And at this point, I was really, really sick, really neurotic. I cooked and packed all of my own food in a little carry-on cooler to go to this all-inclusive resort and demanded that a refrigerator be put in my room, even though it was an all-inclusive, because I was having all kinds of reactions to the foods I was eating. I was freaked out about the products that I was using to wash my hair and putting on my body. And I mean, it was just getting really, really unmanageable for myself and my partner and everyone around me. And I didn't know what to do. And at one point, I was standing in my kitchen juicing. And again, thoughts of, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I have to finish my Klonopin taper. I still have to taper the trileptal mood stabilizer. I have to finish the risperidone taper. My body is breaking down. I'm not going to make it. I have to do something different. And I just looked up into the ceiling, and at that point, I'd gone to the church for help. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how to help me. They're like, I think you need to stay on your medication. And I don't even know who I was talking to, but I said, I don't know who or what is up there, but this isn't working and I need something different. And if you show me something different, I will do it. And if it works, I'll share it with anyone who's willing to listen. It was complete surrender. It wasn't giving up. That's different. It was complete surrender. And I was listening to YouTube at the time. I was listening to actually the pastor at a church at a mega church where I had been attending. And I looked down and there was something there in my feed. And it was something from someone named Marissa Peer. And it said, the mind-body connection. And I thought, what is this? Like algorithmically, what is this mind-body connection? This is new to me. And I thought, play. And she was talking about how what we're thinking in our minds impacts our body. It impacts our reality. And I was like, what? Whoa, what? What I'm thinking is impacting my body? And she gave a couple of examples. And then later on, I thought, yeah, when you're driving down the road, if you hear those sirens, you get this feeling in your body and you pull over and it's this, because you have this thought, oh, I've got to pull over. Did I do something wrong? You're having all these thoughts that are eliciting this response in your body. And it seemed to be such a no-brainer in retrospect, but this was like, whoa, so I thought, whoa, huge revelation. And a couple videos under was something called Abraham Hicks. And I thought, what is this? And I just felt intuitively, I clicked on it. She said, do you know that you create your reality? You create your reality by the thoughts that you think and what you're focusing on. And I was like, what? I'm creating my reality? Literally, this is what I was thinking. And I thought, okay, I realize now in retrospect, this could go two ways. Somebody could call total BS on this, or someone could receive it in the way that I received it, which was, if I'm creating my reality and I am creating all of this in this entire experience, this is freaking fantastic news, because it means according to these people or this thing or whoever's talking, this lady, I can create something different. And I immediately set out to figure out, how do I create something different? I mean, I was hungry for, how do you do this? Because at this point, you could tell me to put on a gunny sack, crack eggs on my head, and howl at the moon. If I thought I was going to get relief, I would do it. So I now know that by releasing that resistance, I opened myself up to a new point of attraction to start having something different, what I asked for, come in. I just needed to get in alignment with it. I learned that it's my thoughts, it's my feelings, it's my focus. What am I focusing on? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? And although feelings were hard to get in touch with at this point, I started to create sort of workarounds. For instance, I can remember what the feeling of X is. So I was doing my best to kind of cobble together these teachings and starting to apply them. And I started to feel a lot better very, very quickly, actually. And I realized that when I put that one step forward, that which you call greater than yourself, I wasn't comfortable calling it God at that point because of my history. I was calling it source, or that inner part of you, that higher knowing part of you, came rushing to meet me in that place and started to individually guide me in ways that were very meaningful and very unique to only me. It was like, I know she's gonna get this if I give it to her exactly like this way, like that, you in ways you can't even make up. So to sort of test myself, I called into my awareness a book by Pam Grout called E Squared. And I thought, I'm just going to start testing this out. I want to find out, is it BS? Is it real? So I started doing some of the experiments in her book. And I was coming back from the health food store, doing my best to stay focused on, following all the rules that were laid out. And I decided to do an exercise about cars. And I said, okay, I want to see red cars. I want to see red cars. So I'm driving around on the road and I start seeing all these red cars. And I come back from the health food store and I said, I don't know, I'm still not convinced. Red is a pretty popular color. It's not like I asked to see yellow cars. And I rounded the corner and there was an elementary school on my left-hand side. And there in the parking lot sat 2 yellow cars immediately. So you can test a universe and the universe will deliver. And I just had more things like that. And some people will call it a synchronicity, but when you start getting so many things building up, it becomes undeniable that there's something here. I'm on the right track. There's something worth pursuing and continuing down the path. It came into my awareness, this idea of the subconscious mind in creating our reality, that subconscious, that below your level of conscious mind awareness, that also impacts your life experience. It impacts what you're creating in your reality, which I didn't let that get me feeling too paranoid or shaken about. But the part of the subconscious mind that really caught my attention was the power of the subconscious mind. So I came at it from an angle of just how powerful the subconscious mind is. It beats your heart, it blinks your eyes, it runs your, it digests your food. It's all of these things happening in the background. And I started to get this idea, what if I could manifest a symptom-free taper off of my medication? So I'm going to, some YouTube lives for some of these law of attraction people on YouTube. And none of them wanted to touch this question with a 50-foot pole. But there was one gal that said, if you've got that idea, it's possible.